Hi, my name's Zane. I'm going to give you 5 quick tips for Photoshop that you should already know. The first thing I'm going to talk about is selecting a color range. Now, a lot of people, when they're doing stuff in Photoshop, is they use the magic wand to create selections. And this is great, except for you can see that one of the big problems is, so let's say if I wanted to select all these areas, I'm going to copy this and put it over the top of another image. So let's say this, go paste. The big problem I get is I have these very horrible edges, okay, and you can actually see that it's got quite a harsh edge, and I've got parts of the image in the background, okay, which isn't all that cool, and it's not very easy to adjust. So, actually, we'll just trash this layer here. So let's pop back here. So let's go deselect. Now we've got kind of a complicated selection to do here. So let's go select color range. Now the color range is very simple. All we do is we select a main color, and then we can adjust this fuzziness, and it will select all of those colors. Okay, and we can use this for all sorts of effects. We can also just add extra colors. So you can see I must have a bit of deviation in my green screen here. Okay, and I can adjust the fuzziness until I get the effect that I want. Hit OK. Alright, and I've got my selection. Now what we'll actually see, if I save this selection, so this is still under my tips of selections, save the selection, we can either create a new image or a new channel. So I'm going to call this people, and it will be saved, and here is a new channel. So here's my red, green and blue channels, and I've got this 4th channel called people. If I just deselect, you'll see that it's in fact a black and white image, and I can adjust this a little bit. You'll see that, for example, this chord here is partially selected. I can come in here and just paint black and white. I'll just go in here, so let's say I need to paint out this a bit on my people layer here. Oopsies. Paint out this white area. Cool. So I can adjust this and make whatever changes I need. Now to select this, all I have to do is command click. If you command click it, you'll select it, you'll load that in as a selection, and in fact you'll see this works in all sorts of places. So if we go over here, I shouldn't have done that now. Step backwards. Yep. Okay, I can actually command click and I'll actually reselect these areas. So even if it was a paintbrush stroke, if I go command select, I'll select that area and I can move it around. Okay. Alright, so now this moves on to my next set of tips. Blending modes. Now, blending mode, so let's say I'm going to take this entire black and white image that I've got here. Okay, so I'll go down to this channels here, I'm going to go select all, copy. Okay, and I'm going to paste this black and white image over the top of this one. And we'll switch that one off. Deselect that, go paste. Alright. Now we've got 3 major types of blending mode. Normal, which you'll be quite used to, it just replaces the pixels from one layer over the top of another layer. There is a transparency value in there as well, but it's just doing a straight replace. Okay, white pixel goes over the top of everything. Okay, if we fade this in and out, we're just making it, change the opacity. We're getting a combination of these 2 layers. However, there's 2 other major types: multiply and screen. Okay, screen adds. Okay, so this has got a few different names. Lighten you'll actually find is very, very similar. Sometimes you'll see this as add in some programs. It's usually add or screen. All it's doing is it's adding the values of this image to this bottom image. Now, you've got to remember that all colors are made up with these sort of values here. So what I'm actually interested in is white as being 100%. Okay, so you can see here if I go the white, my brightness is 100%. In fact, we're just going to look at this for the sake of it. As I drop this down, you'll see that drops all the way down to 0. Okay, so you can think of the maths involved as white is 1, black is 0. So when I add 1 to this green, well, it's just going to max out and it's going to hit white. Okay, if I add black, okay, so this area is black, it has a value of 0, so it's just going to be the color plus 0 is the color. Multiply, on the other hand, multiplies these two together. So in other words, this area of green here times 1 is the same shade of green. This value here times black, or 0, will be black. So the cool thing with this is you'll find that if we zoom right in here, you can see that the semi-transparent pixels are just darkened versions of what's behind it. So we end up with nice, perfect edges. Okay, so you can even see this cable running down through here. It's actually just a really faint little line. That's pretty cool. Okay, this technique is very good for doing things like line drawings, like if you've hand rendered something with pencil on paper. Of course, when you go and multiply your pencil sketch over the top of your image, so you got the black, maybe some of it will be light grey, all those areas will be darkened and the white paper will be completely transparent. Something that would be impossible to separate any other way. Alright, next thing I want to do is talk about a non-destructive workflow. A non-destructive workflow is very common in the film industry. We do it with using node editing, compositing software. However, in Photoshop it's not so obvious. However, totally doable. Okay, so first of all, let's say we want to adjust the hue and saturation. Okay, this green in the background is really dominant. I want to kind of push it into the background, maybe defocus it a little bit and kind of concentrate more on the people in the foreground. So first thing I would do is go into image, adjust, and adjust the hue, saturation, and desaturate it, right? However, there's a big disadvantage of this. If I hit OK, I've been destructive. Okay, I can't come back later and then bring the saturation back or do a hue shift or whatever. So down the bottom here we have a whole bunch of stuff called adjustment layers, and you'll actually see that these are almost exactly the same as what you find in here. However, there's a little bit of a difference. These ones appear as a layer and they actually work as a layer as well. So I can now desaturate my image, cool, but I don't have to commit to it. If I decide actually I don't like that, I can bring the saturation back and it's always adjustable. It's non-destructive. Okay, but it gets cooler. The way that this works, so let's just create a couple of new layers here. Okay, so I'm going to draw a big blue cross. I'm going to do another layer here which is a big red cross, let's say. Alright, now my hue saturation, so I'm going to do a hue shift just to make this look really obvious. So at the moment what it's doing, it's adjusting the hue and saturation of everything that's below here, just like putting any layer over the top. Okay, this one's going over the top of everything beneath it as well. Let's just switch that off actually. However, if I move this down, now I'm adjusting the hue and saturation of my background image and the blue X. If I move it down again, okay, obviously if we go to the bottom it's not going to do anything. However, we can also have it adjust just the layer beneath it just by clicking this here. So now you can see it's doing a hue saturation or a hue shift on the red channel, but not the blue the red layer, not the blue X or the coloured image. And if I move this down, you'll see it affect each one individually. Oh, actually notice as soon as I shift it, this switches off for some reason. It's kind of annoying. Now, here's your cunning tip of the day. Let's say I wanted to do the hue shift on the red and the blue X's, but not the background image. Now I suppose I could duplicate this, but then every time I want to make a change, it's going to have to do it to 2 adjustment layers, which would kind of suck. So let's just create a new folder. Alright. Are we going to get a crash? We got the spinning wheel of death. Let's go pull on it. There we go. So here's my new folder, and into that folder I'm going to put my red X and my blue X, and then I'm going to tell my hue and saturation to affect only the layer beneath it. Now the layer beneath it are my 2 X's. Okay, so that means that if you want to have a whole bunch of adjustments done to a whole bunch of levels all simultaneously and it be non-destructive, you just stick it into a folder and affect only those layers. Fantastic. Alright, now you'll find that most of the effects in here, it's all great, however that doesn't have our filters like a blur. What happens if I want to, as I was saying before, I want to desaturate. I'm just going to trash that, my little X's. Yep, group and contents. Okay, and we're going to do that desaturation. So I can reset this. I'm going to do the desaturate. Okay, maybe darken it a little bit. And I want to blur this. However, again, if I blur this, it's destructive. Okay, I'm going to do that blur, hit OK. I'm not going to be able to go backwards. So, how do I do it? Well, there's this little interesting thing, and you've probably seen it a couple of times, where it says smart objects. If I convert this to a smart object, number one, you can't adjust this now. It's a smart object. I don't know why they call it a smart object, but anyway. But check this out. I can do now a Gaussian blur on here. Cool, hit that. And you'll see a whole bunch of things pop up underneath it. So now I can put my foreground image on, and I've got my background. Now, go to the client comes back and says, sorry, that's too blurry, don't like it. Okay, so if we click on here somehow, come on, there we go, that brings it back up again, and I can de-blur it, if that's the right term, and I can bring some focus back to it. Okay, now you'll actually notice that not all of the filters will work, and I don't know why. Sorry if I select that. Okay, you'll see that, like, I know the lens blur doesn't work, which kind of sucks. So it must just be the way that they're programmed. But lots of these things do. So I can even add noise. Something I love to do is add some monochromatic noise to my background image. Cool. And I can change the order of these. Okay. There we go. So I can have my, come on. So I do my noise and then my blur, or my blur and then my noise. That's brilliant. I can actually, it's non-destructive. Okay, so also that's far too much noise. I can actually fade out the effect as well, which is kind of cool. There we go. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is masks. We can actually use masks for doing things, for example, to our background image. So let's say we want to put a bit of a vignette effect on this, kind of darken the edges, which it kind of already is anyway, but all I need to do is I'm going to create, actually I'm just going to go straight over to here, yeah, and I'm going to use our little mask tool. Is that what it's called? Standard mode, yeah, quick mask, and I'm just going to paint in where I want my vignette to happen. Okay, I could actually do this as a selection as well. So, there we go. What I usually do is I kind of get this sort of approximately where I want it. Okay, if you've got really bright areas, you might not want to have it. So if there's like a big bright sky, you might not want to vignette that part of it. And I'll just go through and blur, and we're going to do a big Gaussian blur to this mask. Okay, that's looking cool. Okay, flick it back, and we're in selection mode. So what I want to do is I want to darken this area. So I'm going to use one of my adjustment layers called exposure. Oops, try it again. Exposure. Okay, and now notice, see I had an area selected, it's created a mask for me, which is pretty cool. And so now I can deselect and darkness. Whoops, I've got it around the wrong way. Not a big deal, go Command I, I'll invert the mask. And so now I'm adjusting the exposure around the outside and creating a nice vignette effect. Okay, and again I can actually put that wherever I want it, so I'm going to pop that down there, pop that back over the top. Cool, and I've got a vignette effect, and it's non-destructive, so I can adjust it whenever I like, and I can even go over to here into the channels. Cool, and I can adjust this as well. So if I decided, let's just grab a nice big soft brush, I can paint in some of this area in here, and if I have X I go into minus, I can minus out this area through here. Cool. Excellent, and so now my exposure is darkening the top and the bottom. Alright. Now masks actually also very handy if you're trying to cut things out. So I haven't really got a good example of how to do this, but basically if you're trying to select something to extract it, rather than say this area here, rather than if I just wanted to cut that area out, I can create a mask and mask that. So I think you can do this with so this is actually a layer effect. And let's say I'm just going to use a lasso tool. So for some reason I want just this area. Cool, and oops, sorry, delete that one. Cool, create a new mask because I've got the selection on now. Cool. And you'll actually see that I can move this around as if it was a selection. However, again, it's non-destructive because I can just pop over here to the channels, have a look at that mask, and I can paint it back in again. So if I disable disable the layer mask, cool, I can actually go in here and go, whoops, didn't do a very good job of that. Let's clean this up a bit. Okay. Choose the size of this. Okay, and I can clean this up and get exactly how I wanted it. I know I'm doing a pretty useless job. Alright, oops. Cool, edit, fill with color, etc, etc. Alright. Okay, and then I re-enable the mask and switch off that channel. Boom. Now you can move the mask. So if I disconnect this, I can actually move the mask without moving the image. So if I go back to my move tool, so I actually move that mask around. Alright. So I suppose another example of this would be, let's say I grab another image here. Let's say this one here. Yeah, we'll just size this up. These are just from my web page. Alright. So let's say I want to load this in as my mask. Cool, and I can go to this here, which is actually it's actually come through as a smart object. Create a mask. Boom. Okay, actually I'll just switch that off. And I'm going to invert my mask. Cool. And so now, it'd be kind of nice if I had a black background or something, wouldn't it? Actually, just disable this layer mask, delete that layer mask, go down that. Okay, that's kind of getting a little bit crazy, but you get the general idea. So that should have been moved back to where it was meant to be. Alright, and so this mask, I can either move the two together, okay, as if it was a cutout, or I can detach these and move just the mask. Okay, so the image is staying where it is and the mask is moving. Okay, or I can move the image and the mask stays where it is. So very, very handy. Really cool for getting some funky effects. Alright, I think that's everything. So yeah, so layer effects, the layer modes or blending modes, select by color range and saving your selections, using masks and using smart filters. Anyway, Check out my blog. It's zspace.wordpress.com. And yeah, I'll see you in the future. Bye bye.